So this video is going to be pretty cool and a little bit different from what we normally do. So what I'm going to do is roll a couple of clips that look back at the dialogue and exchanges between Osiris and other characters in previous seasons. Given that we know this wasn't Osiris and was in fact Savathun, a bunch of these lines hit differently and give us hints at what Savathun's plan was all that time ago, ultimately what we might see in Witch Queen. Now this is just one showcase of Bungie's epic evolution of storytelling through seasonal content that, in my opinion, has been getting better and better season after season. So without talking too much, let's roll this. It's going to be like a little movie going through each season, and then we'll wrap it up at the end.
Osiris was lost, lightless. I saved him from Xivu Arath and assumed his shape so I could guide your victory against her.
If anyone is listening, Sagira is. She sacrificed herself to save me. From them. From the High. I'm tracking the creature responsible for Sagira's death. I will find it. I will end it.
Zavala, I need you to send the young wolf to the following coordinates. I won't wait.
You're here! Finally! Is it done? Calm down, Osiris!
We warned you it was going to be dangerous down here, especially for the ghostless. I'm glad to see we're all okay, though. I'm Glent, by the way. It's a pleasure to meet you all. Go on. Introduce yourself.
They call me the Crow.
No. Had I my light, I could split the atoms of Xivu's treasonous worm from where I stand.
It's a hard thing to lose. I know a few who tried to get it back. We should speak.
The spider for that of the Vanguard. Don't mistake their good intentions for virtue. You'll find politics and self-interest everywhere, even in the tower. To think you can enter this plane using nothing but dead essences.
I ferried the reborn prince to your city so he could be redeemed.
It will protect you from the city's ignorance.
I know what it's for. If this is what it takes to make a difference, I'm in.
I've had to walk these streets under disguise more times than you know. Now I am welcome. Soon you shall be too. Patience and caution.
I protected Zavala from Cayde's ambitions, ending a war before it could even begin.
Accept my offer. You seem like a wise man. We both know that the best victory is won before the war even begins. I'm giving humanity a way out.
The Scions you broke up on Nessus are plotting something. Help Crow investigate this further.
Wait. You aren't going to tell the commander? This concerns him. He deserves to know.
My hope is there won't be anything to tell. Not if you and the Guardian see this through.
Don't know about you, but I'll take that as a compliment.
Zavala challenges her to ceremonial combat. She must accept, or risk losing that support. Humanity's champion versus the Cabals. The winner dictates the future.
This infestation. I've seen it before. Xivu Arath slaughtered my people.
What was it like? That inevitability?
Like burning alive. and realizing the flames are just the beginning. Gasps of scorching air. Helpless panic. The smell. I saw it.
What do you hear, Empress?
Mistakes. Thrown on the pyre of my past. You heard something different?
The ignorance of my youth. The pain of change. Unproven faith wilted by logic. A hive artifact of devilish craftsmanship meant to subvert the wearer's will. I suspected it was the crown in question. It has been altered from its original design. Opened. Instead of controlling minds, it's meant to merge them. It is listening. We cannot leave the crown free.
I delivered the House of Light on its knees to Ikora. I unmasked the enemies lurking inside your city's walls and destroyed them.
Lakshmi is certain that our continued efforts, combined with future war cult's technology, can locate the source of the Endless Night.
I am aware of the device Lakshmi uses. Does it not worry you?
In what way?
It is taxing on its user.
Lakshmi is up to the task.
My engineers could improve on the design. Make it easier for Lakshmi.
No. The Black Armory has already provided necessary enhancements for us. Lakshmi will manage, I'm confident. Besides, the less interaction Lakshmi has with your people at the moment, the better.
As well. Lakshmi has radical ideas, but they are only words. No cause for alarm.
Good. Only words, of course.
She wants what is best for the people of the city. And in truth, you would make an excellent leader. It appears Lakshmi is speaking a bit too freely. I will report her behavior to Ikora, though I imagine she already knows. You should continue working with Lakshmi. Don't mention what you've heard. We must keep this as quiet as we can. With the Endless Night and the Elixni here, the city has become a powder keg. One errant spark and it could be the end of the Vanguard.
But there is hope. Right now, loyalists to the future war cult and new monarchy have rounded up the fallen in our city. With the aid of Osiris, I have learned how to safely command the power of the Vex. I will use it to do what the Vanguard will not.
It would seem the Witch Queen has outmaneuvered us. But perhaps she did not count on us seeing her hand so soon.
Then we strike now. Miss Brax and I will lead forth. We bring the fight to Korea and crush it. But I can confirm that it is the taken Vex mind Quria at the center of the simulation that plagues this city. Quria serves the Witch Queen Savathun. It is she who is responsible for the Endless Night.
Are you certain of your data? After all, Savathun is known for her deceptions.
Osiris, I did not know you had access to this channel.
I wish to confer with you and the Guardian privately. If my experience and wisdom can aid you in Quaria's capture, you may have it.
Capture? Quria is discordant and must be exorcised if the great machine's sky is to shine again.
The things we could learn were we to capture it. Think, Mithrax.
I'll put a spear of light through the Witch Queen's heart myself. For now, I'm overturning all hidden records and full archival access to Osiris, but no one else. Lakshmi claims the Vanguard suffers from a lack of transparency.
This infinite realm beyond material space is but one of many. The universe holds so many dark and fascinating secrets. If only our eyes were open enough to see them. When you first stole into this realm, I did not believe you could achieve what you have. invading a domain of Vex consciousness like this. Yet, here you are. Embodiment of the impossible. Somehow, in spite of everything you've accomplished, I managed to underestimate you. I won't make that mistake again.
Still plotting on it?
Pardon?
You were always trying to look 10 steps ahead. I suppose that's why you and the speaker used to butt heads.
Ah, yes. Well, forewarned is forearmed. But I don't need to tell you that, do I?
I learned from the best. The endless night was Savathun's work all along. I can't believe we missed it.
Yes. It would seem the Witch Queen was rather careful in her manipulations. To fool the Vex.
You almost sound like you admire her.
Shouldn't I? We could learn much from studying Savathun's manipulations. See a larger picture.
To what end, Osiris?
Oh, better to understand your enemies than to learn to think like them.
Now, imagine more hands. All joined against a common enemy.
More Elixni houses?
Elixni. Cabal. Hive too, perhaps. Imagine what we could all do if we simply understood.
You would join hands with Savathun?
Osiris? You must come home. Answer for what you have done. The Vanguard will show mercy.
Yes. Ikora and Commander Zavala are nothing if not generous. Queen Mara, look how they've welcomed the crow into their flock.
It isn't too late. You can still be forgiven.
Be careful. I'll hold you to it.
And Osiris?
Sweet that you should care, little bird. I have been Osiris for as long as you have known him. But rest assured, I will return him safely to you, in exchange for your assistance. You may disagree with my methods, but you can't argue with results. I am no villain, and you are no hero. We are paracausal.
The Berguzia Forge is released, and you can now take part in most of what the Black Armory DLC has to offer, excluding the Last Word quest and Crimson Days coming out later this month. But as Niobe and Berguzia released, so did various brand new quests which offer new exotics, lore, and also secrets to uncover. The first quest involved the mysterious box we've been holding in our inventory for weeks now. We've been holding up 3 keys, and we finally get to complete it as of reset. Now, after completing a bunch of different steps, it turned out that this thing awarded the Izunagi's Burden, which is a sniper rifle that can take a Guardian down with just one shot to the body in the Crucible. Now, regarding the lore, I have made videos on this stuff before, Ada 1's creation, what the device is, but at this point it makes way more sense now that we know the Obsidian Accelerator is in the game and it's also in Ada's possession.
Is that... You found it. Thank you.
So pretty cool, right? The emblem basically showcases that you've completed this activity. Nothing too much of course, but let's discuss the cutscene and what the heck happened when Ada inserted that Cortana looking thing into the back of her head. So for those of you that don't know, Ada's mother Henriette created the Black Armory along with two others named Helga and Yuki. Helga worked at Clovis Bray formerly, and Yuki was very smart on the engineering side of things. Now when all of this was going on, Adelaide, or Ada, was just a young girl and things were going well with the armory. New breakthroughs were developed, and this meant that if something were to happen to humanity, they could use these weapons to fend off whatever it may be. Ada's mother didn't like a couple of things though. So Helga wanted to build these forges to make these weapons more accessible on a mass scale. So putting forges like the ones we use now on different planets and people would be able to access them, but this was not Henriette's dream. Yes, the weapons were super important, but they weren't supposed to be spread out to everyone. That would lead to chaos. So of course it was not something she was fond of, but it did happen. Now second and most of all is that Helga helped develop something called Project Niobe. This involved the creation of exos with Black Armory tech and making them mobile forges capable of generating this tech on their own. Henriette hated this idea like the implementation of the forges, but again it developed into something and became a thing. One day the darkness would arrive here at Earth and began destroying everything as we know it. In this attack, Helga ended up dying and Henriette's daughter Adelaide, or Ada, was severely injured and nearing death. Henriette could save her daughter's life, but it meant doing something that disgusted her to give her daughter a second chance, and this of course was making her an exo. As the darkness would invade again if it had the chance, they decided they need to leave the labs and finish building this exo out there on the road. Well, today was horrible. We had some downtime, so Yuki wanted to test the exo's new functionality. This was the entire purpose of the exo in the first place, Project Niobe. Helga's great experiment to make our weapons more deadly through a sort of on-the-spot phase transition of the guns. In other words, a walking, talking forge. Years ago, it was just an idea. Now, it's a reality. Seeing the exo discover her ability was, well, thrilling. It was nice to feel something other than dread for a few minutes, and a few minutes was about all we got. So the exo here wakes up on the road and Yuki wants to test her new functionality. Shortly after this, the group was attacked by the first Risen, or the Guardians before the Guardians that didn't really have a purpose at this point. They weren't fighting for the light yet. These Risen wanted Ada and the Obsidian Accelerator. They saw how powerful she was and they thought, hey, we can use that could be part of our arsenal. Now next to just Ada, they also wanted the Obsidian Accelerator, which was a super important device used in the creation of the Niobe labs and its content. So after the group escaped and continued onward for a bit, the Risen did catch up with them again. At this point, Yuki was wounded from the previous encounter and didn't have much longer to live. Yuki is dead. It didn't happen like I thought it would. One of the men who had attacked us returned, this time with an offer. He wanted the exo. He had seen what she was capable of at the back of the truck, how she turned our weapons into something even more deadly with nothing but her hands. The exo stood, willing to sacrifice herself for us. I was horrified, but before I could say anything, Yuki lied and said that she had the Obsidian Accelerator, that it was in her backpack. The man approached her cautiously as she quickly looked at me. That one last look, the same one that had calmed me down so many times. She reached for the backpack as the man drew near. The exo grabbed me and gave me cover as the grenade exploded, shielding me from the flaming shrapnel. Then she helped me up and we ran. I looked back once. All that remained now was Henriette and her exo daughter Adelaide, who had no idea she was once human. They traveled for days to try and make their way towards the sea, but were delayed when they seen the bodies and wreckage floating out there in the waters. With that specific island not really being an option anymore, they decided to settle in a nearby camp where they once again began to get hunted by the Risen. We watched the camp burn from the cliffs. I saw the people with their drones fan out in all directions. I could follow the paths they cut through the darkness by the flickering of their drone's light. There's no time for anything else, and despite her concern, she has opened up to me. I'm removing the Obsidian Accelerator and sending her down the road. They can come and get it from me, not her. This is likely goodbye. Dear Adelaide, when those people and their drones found me alone at the deserted intersection, they demanded to know where you were. I offered them the Obsidian Accelerator. I gave it freely. You promised me you would leave me, and you did, but you never said how far you would go, did you? You stayed close enough to watch through your scope. As the man took aim at my head, I heard the shot and assumed I was dead, but it was him who was dead, not me. You were so far that none of us knew where to look. The second man winged me with another one of our weapons. He began to gloat about that, but another round from you shut him up. 2 more thunderous shots, and their drones were as dead as they were. I saw the glare from your scope disappear, and I knew you were heading away. I know you must feel guilty, but don't. It was I who wronged you. I grabbed the accelerator and got as far from the shouts of the aggressors as I could. They've been on my tail. By now you're long gone, and I've led those people back inland. I'm done running. The end of my story is close, as it probably should be. So I guess it's time to tell you a few things about, well, you. The end of your life should have followed its natural trajectory. I'm ashamed I changed it for selfish reasons. Does the name Adelaide bring any flicker of recognition? It is your birth name, and you heard it every day of your life until the day I sent you without your consent into a new world. You became Ada 1 when I robbed you of your end. I've loved you since before you were born, and in trying to give you everything, perhaps I've robbed you of a final human experience, a dignified death. I know I will not see you again. If you want to know more about your past, know that you were born a second time in the Niobe labs. When you were wounded at the labs and I saw you were losing your fight, I did what I always did when the chips were down. I created something. You, Ada 1, from what I had almost completely lost. I did it out of the fear of losing you forever. I charted the course of your life and made decisions that were yours to make and not mine. I hope you find it in your heart to forgive me for that. I was naive, looked too often to the past. I just couldn't let any of it go. I never did have much respect for the natural order of things, and Helga, well, she was the opposite of me. She only wanted to grow the armory, to see its full potential, and Yuki helped make that vision possible. The two of them spent as much time looking ahead as I did looking back. I realize now that there's a balance to life. You look backward a little, you look forward a little, but most importantly, you live in the here and now and appreciate what you have, because you never know when it's all going to be snatched from you. Learn from our successes and our mishaps. Be bold. Do not fear the future, but respect the past and never forget where you came from. And try never to fear death if you can help it. I know I don't anymore. You know what's funny? I never considered how lucky I was for the time we had together, the envy of all the mothers who ever lived. I got to love you twice. Your mother, Henriette. Now, not sure about you, but I think that was a great story. This is just part of the annual pass. It wasn't something as big as Forsaken, but the lore behind it is incredible. Now, what I just read was the last note from Henriette to Adelaide revealing the truth about it all. She was created or born a second time in the Niobe labs, and this obsidian accelerator was lost when Henriette ran away from the Risen. So that is essentially what this is in this quest. We go out there, recover the obsidian accelerator, and return it to Ada, restoring her full power. So we can sort of see some of this evidence of the mobile forge thing from Ada's inventory herself. We know that Project Niobe said this allows her to become a walking, talking forge, and that's essentially what she can do now. Now, while we don't see, weapons getting forged, she does have an obsidian accelerator in her inventory, which allows her to modify these weapons, add more damage to them, and make them stronger. And I think the thing that is kind of funny is that when we first started Black Armory, she's like, Guardians aren't welcome here, get the heck out of my armory. But at this point, it's pretty much the exact opposite. We brought up all the forges, she now has the obsidian accelerator that was lost for a long time, and things are looking just fine. This story follows the tale of a guardian named Catabasis and his ghost Gilgamesh, who work for Emperor Callus and are loyal to his cause. So this information can be found from the Captain's Log lorebook. At this point in time of making this video, the whole lorebook may not be released. I'm not sure how you get those entries upon making this, but it can all be read through Ishtar and other sites as well. So as the story goes, this guardian confronts Callus aboard the Leviathan, explaining that he wants to take the job. The guardian then wanders the halls past Cabal guards and different trophies Callus has gathered around the system until he eventually speaks with the true Emperor himself. Now, this is one of the first times it's explained what Callus actually looks like. Now, in this lore book, they described him as a Cabal figure in a cage aboard his planet-eating vessel. Catabasis describes him as, his skin is mottled with sickly translucence that grips my stomach. After the Guardian agrees to take the job and then Callus, invites him to meet his true self, Callus begins to speak. When the darkness found me adrift in the cosmos, rejected by a people I had made, I thought to have found a confidant, no, an idol. They promised to return to me, to uplift me, that we may dance together among the stars and drink their dying ecstasy till the end, as one. But their chilling little fleet came and went. It was luscious and so many tasted so much. Yet I am empty, nothing, trapped in this limbo of their lie.
Seen it and others like it. Too many scorn for an active guardian. In place of each world the darkness stole. At the edge of our heliopauls, Callus meant to commune with the darkness.
So Callus was obsessed with the darkness and upset that it hadn't recognized him as a god and wouldn't give him the power he thought he deserved. He wanted to be on the same tier of the darkness as he met it once in the system and it said it would come back for him, but it didn't. Callus will expose the secrets of the darkness and use them to reclaim Tor Battle. It will be. So Tor Battle was the Cabal homeworld that was essentially destroyed by Xivu Arath and the Hive. Now that tale is for another time, but it appears this is Callus's goal, to reclaim the throne as the Cabal Empire, reunify his people even if it means taking out Cayde and the Red Legion, and then going back to their homeworld to fix it up a bit. So at this point, Cayde has boarded a thresher with a Scion officer named either Quinzeek or Chinzeek, who was basically in charge of this whole project under Callus. They then made their way to a Red Legion shipyard on Nessus where they found the Glykon Velatus. This was a Cabal carrier class warship like the one seen when they invaded during the Red War. Cayde then works with a few Scions to make sure the warship gets off the ground without alerting the Red Legion in the area. After some convincing, sneaking around for a bit and helping each other out, it seems like it worked and the ship got off the ground. As it goes, this ship then heads to the reef and is later greeted by Callus's arrival in his own ship with a device. They say, "They brought something on board. Scorn haven't shut up since. Chinzeek is getting it ready in the viewing chamber." So this of course is the Crown of Sorrow, the hive crown created by Savathun that makes those who wear it go insane. This is basically what happened in the Crown of Sorrow raid with Galron. Callus put that crown on him instead of wearing it himself, which is what Savathun wanted him to do, and we see how that turned out. So with that one lore card from last season and now this lore book, we know Callus was here at the reef to obtain the Scorn and basically take some of them. Cayde questions what the Scorn are going to be used for. After convincing, the Scion officer reveals the plan. Callus will draw the darkness into them, and we will squeeze from them all they know. How, I insist. When we arrive at the anomaly, you will see. Another line from Callus explains this. I reach out as you showed me when we last met. I split open each Scorn mind from my carriage, searching for you. Nothing, every time. So I tear open their bodies, fitfully pulling limb from socket, mind from skull, scouring them for your presence. I search until the shrieking can only be heard from distant pens.
Scorn. They did not come from Callus's menagerie. The dark ether in this device has been tampered with. Its connection to the darkness galvanized, rooted. Callus always did embody a clever sort of madness.
So the Scorn were essentially being experimented on here on this ship because Callus was searching for the darkness and trying to learn more from it. If you played this mission, we met the big boss at the end, which was called the Locust, and I'm assuming this is the one that wore the Crown of Sorrow in the clip.
I found a journal of Callus's scribe, Omsat. Translation as follows. Today, Callus graced the Glykon with his presence and gazed upon the anomaly. His counselors prepare the exhibition chamber with gold from the Castellum. They are confident the crown is ready. The end will lay eyes upon him and weep at his magnificence. Omsat kept notes on experiments as well. It seems that Scorn, exposed to the anomaly, all suffered contiguous neuron death. It consumed their minds. All but one who spoke with many dead voices.
This survivor would become the centerpiece of their studies.
When the darkness arrived though, Callus disappeared and was nowhere to be seen. The Glykon itself was then shrouded in darkness, abandoned near the reef.
Several months ago, a Cabal vessel bearing the name Glykon disappeared near the reef. This ship matches its description and heading. So far, our hails have gone unanswered, and the distress signal continues to loop. You're clear for live-fire engagements. Board it, and find our missing Guardian.
In some of the cars, this Guardian experiences darkness waves that happen every so often, and that the Scorn still claw their ways throughout the ship even though this place is surrounded in the dark. But after this darkness arrived, what happened to Catabasis? On board the derelict ship, the Guardian would search for a way to survive, a way to possibly escape this Scorn and darkness-infested tomb. After a time, Catabasis and Gilgamesh were having some troubles. The ghost would wander the ship on its own, sometimes while the Guardian got killed and revived many times, hoping to find a way to escape this ship. Gilgamesh is becoming more distant, talking less. He wanders off for days at a time. So far, he always comes back. One day, these two had a fight. The ghost didn't want to continue anymore. He basically wanted to give up, sever their connection to the light, and as he describes it, be free. He began to get corrupted by the darkness. Take a listen to this. We can survive this. Catabasis holds out his palm for me. Please? I don't want survival, Catabasis. I drift away from him. I want salvation. It got to you. Catabasis sobs weakly, his epiphany complete. You can end this, for both of us. It's your turn to sacrifice, I offer. Everything you say is a lie. Catabasis grasps for his rifle. Lever to action, shot to nothingness, goes to dead memory. So at that point the lore book ends, but we do know that Catabasis did send this distress signal out into the system from this ship. This is the one we found in the European Dead Zone to start this quest. In that signal, he says if we can rescue him from this ship, do everything we can to save him, we can have his rifle. So what did we do? We talked to Commander Zavala and then boarded our own jump ships on a course towards the Glykon.
Distress signals are far too common these days. Our recovery crews can hardly keep up with them. This one, however, I want you to look into personally. Rhulk brought it to my attention. He tells me the transmission has been exposed to darkness. Our enemy worms its way into everything it touches, even mudding our signals. What's more is the port of origin, near the reef, from a Guardian claiming to be aboard a ship belonging to the dethroned Emperor Callus. Cayde will no doubt respond to a signal from one of her father's ships. They have a complicated relationship. If there's a Guardian on board, exposed to darkness, I want to know why. Extract them safely, so we may have a word with them.
Upon boarding the ship, we are greeted with a derelict vessel with Scorn everywhere and the bodies of those Cabal destroyed by these flower-looking tendrils. Now all of this is most likely related to the darkness, given that's where the ship is, it's in an area where the darkness took over, and also we've seen the same type of thing on the Drifter ship as well. And to add on to that even more, the title of this mission essentially means warning. So there's definitely more than just a Scorn infection going on here. After taking out the Locust, we did find what remains of Catabasis.
Faint traces of light. That thing was a Guardian. We're too late. Far too late. Take the rifle. It was offered, was it not?
Better in your hands than left for another. I'll speak to Savala about authorizing exploratory outings. If we can recover our lost friend's gold, we may learn more of how he died. Return to the city.
So as we can see, the Guardian didn't survive. We take the weapon anyway because I guess that's what us Guardians do, but this tale on this ship is truly horrifying. Not sure about you, but I think this is one of my favorite missions so far. The mystery surrounded by it, a derelict ship just floating out there in space, and yet again more links to the darkness which we'll eventually meet someday. So that's pretty much the story of the Glykon, but let's talk about some little Easter eggs you may have missed and some things that might be foreshadowing future events. First up in the hangar there is a Guardian ship. Now you can scan this to get one of your collectibles for the lore pages and things like that, but I'm assuming this ship belonged to Catabasis, right? It's on a Cabal vessel and he's the only Guardian most likely linked to it, so that's my assumption. Next up we have the darkness walls and mechanic we use to get to new areas of this ship. Now you can see once we shoot these concentrated areas of darkness as Osiris describes them, we get this little buff called Egregore Link. So one definition of this is basically a concept representing a distinct non-physical entity that arises from a collective group of people. So that kind of makes sense given what we know about the darkness, possibly not the ships being the darkness or something representing them, like how the Guardians and humans represent the light. I might make another video on this entirely, but this could be some type of new ability or subclass coming in the near future. We're already using stasis. Would we be using something involving this bluish color, the plants, the flowers, or whatever is going on here? And lastly, probably the most coolest thing, there's some spoiler warnings right here. You can click away now if you'd like. Okay, so it appears there may be different variations of this mission with different dialogue. For example, Cayde and Osiris talking about what happened to Callus because Cayde wants to know what's going on with her father. But in one of those missions, we might see a new area on the ship we haven't before, and that is in fact directly below Catabasis through these doors right here. Now unfortunately you can't see it currently unless you glitch out of the map, which is actually pretty easy to do, but if you do get out of the map and get a certain look without the objects calling away, you can see the Crown of Sorrow below Catabasis. So you can see we see the Crown of Sorrow, the same one that Galron wore, right below Catabasis. Possibly this is what infected him, but we know for sure this is what Callus was using to try and get the darkness out of the Scorn. You can even see a pile of dead Scorn right in front of the crown. In the raid video I released a couple of days ago, we summarized Rhulk and the story behind the Vow of the Disciple raid. As mentioned, today we're going to dive a little deeper and talk about Rhulk's story and pull some of that lore from the new armor pieces. We'll get into things like his homeworld and his relationship with Savathun, and some of this has already been discussed, so keep that in mind. If you'd like to watch the other video, there's a link for that down below. Rhulk is a part of a new species who is not yet named to my knowledge, and his homeworld was called Lubre. Lubre went through its own collapse much like Earth did. And after the Traveler left Lubre, it would continue to get bombarded by asteroids and pieces of its own moon. Content. Together, a fire burns bright. Our cavern is a light. We hide within it to keep safe. The hazy sky is outside, and surely there are some without shelter this night. Those who will be torn apart by the wild, by the umbral sun, by those Lubraean guards who call themselves stalkers, pursuing us on behalf of a brutal regime. We are divided, split by a shimmering orb that appeared briefly in our sky, as if having two suns isn't already crowded enough. What of this shimmering orb? It was before my time. It came, we evolved, it left us with a mess, those who believed in good progress, those who didn't. So from this card we can see that it appears the Traveler visited the homeworld of Rhulk, and his people were kind of at like a civil war against each other. Some had different ideals, some lived in the cities, some lived in the wilds, and after the Traveler left they had their own collapse where things began to die, and one of their sons was destroyed. Just before Rhulk could die though, the Witness would arrive to Lubre to take Rhulk in as one of his disciples, possibly the first. In the end, Rhulk is responsible for blowing up one of their suns and is the reason most of their species got destroyed. No one escapes my wrath, not even the little ones, not even civilians. The city watches in horror. They know what I am. This must stop. Their faces inform only of relief. Stop. Their faces inform only of relief. I command you. Their faces inform of only relief. The Saphiric sun implodes. Lubre is cracking. Lubre is shattering. Lubre is upending. What have I done? They've turned against me, my regime. They've perished by my hand, my clan. They call me a monster. They put me in a cage. They seek my execution. But your luster, I see it, even though they took you from me. You guide my hand. You free me of these chains. You find me again. You return me to my glaive, no longer Rhulk's bane, serving only one final purpose, Lubre's ruin. A shattered sky, a planet convulsing, our existence upended. Their folly was their intended salvation, siphoning light from the Saphiric sun itself. I use your luster, turn their technology against them, like a backfired pistol. After serving them, protecting them, fighting for them, suffering for them. A shattered sky, a planet convulsing, tearing apart. One Lubrean remains. Me. But not for long. What have I done? I stare into the abyss. It has opened, truly opened this time, to show me what lies beneath. Death. I drop your luster. I drop Lubre's ruin. I let myself fall in, and then I am here with you, my witness. So throughout the whole Shattered Sun lore books, Rhulk is having this flashback of Lubre and his people and speaking about it to the witness. We can see the dashed lines are the witness's response. So he wakes up from this little flashback, steps back, and the witness says, "What do you feel, my child?" And he says, "Relief."
I would look to the sky and see the two sons of my Lubre. One eternally shaded in the dark, the other always a brilliant blue. And in them, I had seen the folly of our kind. A fear of something we believed bigger than us, and a reliance on that which kept us. That blue sun that we harnessed our power from. A simple reversal of that power cracked the blue in half, shut it off, and Lubre died.
One day, the witness would arrive on Lubre to take Rhulk in as one of his disciples, possibly the first. I plan on making another video about other disciples and even some characters we know possibly turning into disciples, but basically know that they work for the witness and most of them are a part of a bunch of different alien species. One of Rhulk's first missions brought him to a planet and an alien race called the Oslid. Rhulk would hide in silence for 14 years, stalking the Oslid and turning them against one another, slaughtering them from the shadows. They are liquid fear sealed within porcelain flesh, my witness. These Oslid whose service you require. I arrived as you bid, without ceremony or fleets, and for 14 journeys around their star, I have stalked them in the dark, testing them to find even one who may serve as warrior. So that is pretty crazy. In the end, this entire race was killed thanks to Rhulk. And after all that time, when he finally reveals himself to the Oslid, this last one remains and they all have perished. They no longer need my direct ministrations. My children have children. Some bequeath my lessons. The favored spawn are those who learned my lessons well. They converge on my shape, and unprovoked, prepare banquets of wisdom on which their kin gorge. They craft weapons, little more than hurled rocks standing in the long shadow the darkness casts, but enough to crack their world apart. Only Un disappoints, frightened as he is now by his own potential for glory. I cut him free of my sucker. Obscrutiny is the crueler fate. In the end, the entire Oslid race was killed thanks to Rhulk. So first he had his species basically killed on their homeworld, and now he hid in the shadows and did the same thing here with this race. This champion, Un, whom he was following and kinda believed could be the one to maybe join him in the Witness, was one of the last who remained, but also perished. This moment reminded him of his own back on Lubre, and this was a lesson taught to him by the Witness. So this whole time, Rhulk was hiding in the shadows, remember, and this is when he finally appears for the first time to this race. He levels a weapon on me, and it occurs that I never learned what they call their defenses. It is as irrelevant as everything else that made up their culture, but he is the first to stand and face me. He dashes hate against me and breaks. He does not know my name, he does not know my purpose, and he demands, then implores, then begs. He prostrates himself on the floor, his carapace racking with convulsions as if mourning milks the sorrow from his flesh. And I am weak, my Witness. I whisper, I am Rhulk. Devoid of context, it is as meaningless as any other aspect of his people's end. Something sacred within him dies, and he gazes up as I have gazed at you, and only now do I appreciate your lesson. If you watch the other video, the Witness and Rhulk are responsible for the evil plan of turning the Krill into the Hive. Rhulk arrived on Fundament and dove into its oceans, encountering the Leviathan, a creature who was close to the Traveler as we know from the Books of Sorrow. Around this time, the Traveler was also in the same system as Fundament. If you played the Witch Queen campaign, we would know how this goes. In the Oceans of Fundament, the Leviathan gave Rhulk the same speech it would give to the Sisters, to not go any deeper, that an ancient evil lurks below, and that he should turn back. So what did Rhulk do? Well, he tore out a bone from its ribcage and used the thing as a weapon in the future, essentially.
It was your infinite wisdom, my Witness, that led me into the planet's great sea, and face to face with that which was believed to be unbeatable. You instilled in me a true understanding of wanton domination, not for pleasure, but as a means to achieve our absolute finality. When I reached the creature known to some as the Leviathan, it laid its thoughts bare. Turn from the deep fearmonger, it relayed. I know what you seek. Press on, and you will drown in it. I do not drown. I spoke with a defiant tongue. In a mere infinitesimal measure of time, I held a rib of this beast in one hand, and pushed aside its maimed vessel with the other. I rise.
Rhulk after this continued to the deep where he encountered the Worm Gods and commanded them to follow the Witness. The 5 Worm Gods and their mother would agree. The mother would be taken by Rhulk and used to create worm larvae for this new Hive army, and the 5 children would follow the Witness's commands and that of the deep. In the Warlock boots, we can see Rhulk sending these worms adrift in the Oceans of Fundament to reach the Osmium Kingdom, the kingdom of the Krill, or what became the Hive. A time later, we come to the Throne World, where Rhulk was stationed here now to watch over this Hive creation, and particularly Savathun. Rhulk's pyramid ship houses that worm god Zeta, who is hooked up to a superweapon called the Upended, allowing Rhulk to continuously create worm larvae for Savathun's armies. One day though, Savathun would begin to change her ideals and turn towards that of the light. She didn't want to feed that worm anymore, feed into the darkness and Rhulk and the Witness's plan, so she wanted to change things up.
It was a success. I was able to reverse engineer the Hive's organic communication systems within the Dreadnought. I directly interfaced with their network of collective consciousness. The Black Fleet intends to punish Savathun for interfering with its efforts to communicate with us. No one knows where the Witch Queen is, not even her own court. And now Xivu Arath is using this opportunity to consolidate her power.
So the Darkness and even Savathun's followers were not happy with what she was doing. Not long after this, about a year later in Season of the Lost and now Witch Queen, Savathun would return with the light, converting this dark throne world into places of light and worshipping the Traveler instead of the Witness. She had enough of this evil being's ways, and so she would trap Rhulk here, cursing him until we would enter the raid.
Guardians, I am not your vanguard and I give no orders, only a warning. The pyramid ahead is not like those you've previously encountered. This one was not left for you to find. You were not guided to it, not beckoned. This domain belongs to a dark entity, unknown in power. It seeks domination of the throne world. Your presence within will be most
Welcome, children of light. Drown in the deep. You have served your purpose. All that awaits you now is the gift of death. The darkness beyond your final days.
Forgive me!
In terms of mechanics, Rhulk is quite unique. Most raid bosses in Destiny are stationary or move around a little bit from side to side, but Rhulk straight up charges across his play space, kicks you in the face, and uses his giant glaive to damage your fire team. Even the personality of this dude, he has all the power in the world it would seem and is so arrogant about it, just walking around like he's better than you and your god-killing friends. We are unsure if he's truly dead, most likely isn't given we've seen Taniks a million times, but Rhulk was a nice change in my opinion to the normal gods we're used to slaying like Oryx. So in summary, Rhulk destroyed his own people and joined the Witness. He then stalked a race and killed them in the shadows for 14 years, causing a nuclear war among themselves. He dove into the oceans of Fundament and ripped out the rib bone from the Leviathan creature who's a disciple of the Traveler, and then converted the worms to the darkness. After that, he would watch Savathun in her throne world and create a hive army with the worm god's worms, and then Savathun would trap him in the throne world, putting a curse on him. When she died, this curse got a little funky, and then we were sent in to take him out in the Vow of the Disciple raid. Welcome on in, Guardians. Hope you're having a great day. As mentioned, we are going to look back at various releases and pick out some cool connections to the Witness. Connections we always brushed off or vaguely connected to the overall darkness, but there may be much more going on under the surface. And there's probably a ton of these, so leave your own if you remember any in the comments below. Throughout Destiny 1, we knew about the darkness, but it was like, yeah, we'll cross that bridge when we get there. We didn't really focus much on it throughout the first game's plot and even its expansions. In Destiny 2 though, after the Red War, we would slowly see the darkness plot creep up. When the Traveler unleashed its wave of light to defeat Gaul, the Pyramid Fleet was alerted. At first, it would appear that it was dormant, and then Savathun tells us that the Witness was sent away among the stars during the collapse, and then this is now when they have awakened. There were minor events like Dredge and Yor and certain Guardians becoming corrupted by darkness, so to speak, but Season of the Drifter really toyed with the idea of our Guardian testing out the ways of the dark. Drifter himself was a rogue lightbearer, and he gave us a choice. We can choose his game of Gambit banking motes of darkness, following the goals of the Nine, or side with the Light and the Vanguard in Aunor. Drifter was sort of like a precursor of using his light in different ways, not just for good, sometimes for bad, hence why he is given the term rogue lightbearer, doing what he wants with it.
There are things out in the dark that only the dark can overcome. Trust me.
The next big test was in Shadowkeep. The pyramid inside our moon was left behind for some reason, and as the others would approach beyond the system, this one would beckon us to come closer, to interact with these memories of the dark and the nightmares, and to learn the truth about these powers. In fact, when you think about it, every pyramid besides the one in Savathun's throne world belonging to Rhulk was really just there to sway us to the dark side.
It beckons us to come closer. Violence, beauty, truth. These things await inside. There's no turning back now. Welcome. We've been waiting. In light, there is only death. Come to us. Do not be afraid. Respite lies ahead.
In this pyramid, we also interact with a dark artifact. This right here is the device that allows us to commune with the darkness in the first place. So it was pretty clear at this point, the dark is bribing us to join its side, saying, I'm much better than the light, I have more power, in the light there's only death, so join our side. And right after this, Eris would take up stasis. Also in Shadowkeep's ending in the Black Garden cutscene, we see a clone of ourselves speaking with pyramid ships hovering in the background. This may have been directly tied to the witness, in fact, if we take a look back at it. All of these voices speaking through the ghost may have been as well, even the movements are the same.
You made it. We have heard your cries for help, and soon we will answer. Who are you? Don't you recognize us? We are not your friend. We are not your enemy. We are your salvation. The children of soul cry out for salvation. We are your salvation.
In Season of the Arrivals, the whole plot was Eris and our guardian trying to speak to the darkness, but Savathun was intervening. Gazing back with the knowledge we now have, the witness wanted to speak its lies to us, but Savathun was trying to blind us from the truth. In the conclusion though, we would kill Nokris, who was working for Savathun, and hear this broadcast from the darkness, that ancient power awaits us on Europa.
Don't you see? It is as we once said. In light, there is only weakness, only failure, only death. But where the light takes, the dark gives. No longer will you be a pawn. No longer will you watch the lives of those you care for be lost. Remember, in darkness there is only strength, only victory, only life. Ancient power awaits you on Europa.
Beyond Light would yet again beckon us to enter the pyramid ship and actually acquire this power for ourselves. We would later learn that this power was within us this whole time, and that perhaps if we use it in the right way, it can actually help us.
Okay, Barracks, that's 2. Did you hear that? Sounded like voices.
What? Who?
The ones who spoke through me.
Must hurry, then. There's one more relay.
Oh no. It's them. They're here. They're beckoning us.
Beckoned. You answered. We've kept you waiting long enough. Come to us. Salvation awaits. The light believes you thankless. Nothing more than a soldier asked again and again to do its bidding. So we want to thank you with a gift to help you finally take control.
Look what I've done for you. No more light. No more dark. Look within. Focus your power. How interesting.
The only thing we have to break here is you.
Come then, Pawn. Show me what freedom has given you.
So ever since the darkness was alerted or woke back up, the Witness and its fleets that is, it's been tempting us to use the darkness. We know that the Witness wants the final shape, which could be nothing, and destroying different species seems to accelerate that plan, recruiting the last among them to join his forces like he did Rhulk in The Disciples. The Witness could think, yeah, if I use the darkness, use these powers to just kill everything, maybe we get to that final shape faster. Now here's an interesting thought. We had our own speaker for the light. What if the Witness is just that, but for the dark? We know light and dark can both be used for good and bad, but the entities behind them like the Guardians and the Black Fleet may bring about the end in the final shape expansion depending on the way they use these forces. Light is gifted by the Traveler. Darkness seems to be taken by those who have enough strength to wield it. Before we wrap this up, I wanted to throw in some other cool references found in the lore. I basically just went on Ishtar and threw in Witness, and from the results I wanted to see if there was any coincidences here. So the first one is kind of a stretch, but Gaul says Witness in this final cutscene.
Traveler, do you see me now? I am immortal. A god. You have failed. Witness the dawning of a new age.
In the Callus, It Stared Back card where he goes to the edge of the universe and interacts with something, he says this. At the edge of the universe, I stared into the infinite deep. It stared back and was pleased. I would become the herald of its victory and bear witness for all creation. And in Season of the Arrivals, this Streaker was called Savathun's Witness, which could just mean the Streaker looking out for Savathun like the one in Savathun's Song Strike, or what if it's more directly straight up tied to the Witness, as we know Savathun knows who he and the disciple of Rhulk are. Anyway, Guardians, have any cool darkness stories of your own from the lore? Leave them in the comments below. So as mentioned before, we're going to start by reading the first 2 narrative previews, summarize what that could possibly mean, and then we'll speculate and have some fun with it. Now, of course, I'm not saying anything of the tail end part of this video is true, but just some conversation that came up when talking with some friends. There are definitely some holes in some of these theories and evidence, but this stuff is always interesting to talk about, and I want to hear your opinions as well. So here's the timestamp for the conspiracy theory type part, and let's get into the lore right now. The first narrative preview is titled Praxic Order. So in this card, the Drifter is going to go undercover to listen to a top secret meeting. It says the more petals Lionel swept into his garbage bag, the more there seemed to be. His back slightly crooked with age, burned in protest as he continued to stoop and work. A man in a long coat stood watching him on the opposite side of the long hallway. Lionel figured he'd go away eventually, but the man stayed, idly flipping a green coin. "Can I help you?" Lionel asked, growing annoyed. "They make elders do this? Can't the maintenance frames handle it?" Speeds things up, the petals get everywhere from the whatever the kids call it. Crimson Days? That's the one. Come on, no one's too old to celebrate Crimson Days. "My wife died the day the tower fell." The man stared at the ceiling. Lionel continued to sweep. "I got nothing to do today," the man said. "Let me take care of this for you." No thanks." Lionel dumped another dustpan full of petals into his bag, then turned and walked right to the man's outstretched hand, palm up, full of glowing sapphire cubes. "Lot of glimmer," Lionel said, eyeing the money and the man in turn. "Yours. Let me finish this job for you." "You a guardian?" It's complicated." Lionel stared down at the pure material potential sitting in the man's hands. "I'll take your vest and your hat too," said the man. "Please." The man took off his coat and put on Lionel's orange vest. He put on Lionel's hat and pulled it low, covering his eyes. As he walked, he passed the frame, diligently sweeping the connecting antechamber, and paused to point back toward the metal-strewn hallway he'd just come from. "You missed the spot," he said. The frame stared at him and then at the hallway. It marched towards its new objective, and the man continued his walk. So just a little summary before I continue reading. The Drifter met this old man who was sweeping up petals from Crimson Days, and he's like, "Let me take care of this for you." So he gives the man some glimmer, takes his vest, his clothes, his hat for a disguise, and now he's going to listen to a top secret meeting. Warlock Aunor Mahal brushed past a maintenance worker in an orange vest, emptying a trash can in a large plastic bag. The door to the consensus closed heavily behind her. The vanguard and representatives from various city factions had gathered around a massive table. Cayde's seat was empty. "The Drifter poses no immediate threat to the population," Zavala was saying to the consensus as Aunor approached. "Therefore, we motion to grant him a more permanent lease." "My order disagrees," she cut in fiercely. Zavala turned. With a slight incline of his head, he gestured from her to the rest of the group. "This is Warlock Aunor, representing the Praxic Order." "I have paperwork to file, so I'll make this short," she said. "If the Vanguard is willing, the Praxic Order would like to excise the Drifter from the city immediately. We'll do it ourselves." Zavala turned to look at her. "The Praxic opinion is noted, but the city welcomes all Guardians. He's no Guardian. The city welcomes all of humanity who are willing to stand in defense of the city. Commander, with due respect, you asked the Order to have a voice in this discussion." She looked Zavala in the eye and swept her gaze around the table to address Consensus and Ikora. "The Praxic Order has existed since the founding of the city to keep artifacts of the darkness out of Guardian hands. In our opinion, the Drifter represents as great of a threat to our people as Gaul or the Taken King." "Go on, girl," Executor Hideo said, steepling his fingers. "She is no girl," Ikora hissed. Aunor ignored them both, continuing. "The Drifter has convinced the Guardian population to use the Taken as a weapon to murder Guardians." "There have been no final deaths," said Zavala. "That we know of," Aunor replied. "You're allowing that man to normalize interaction with the Taken." Ikora and Zavala shared a look. "The past few months, the Praxic Order has seen a historic number of Guardians go rogue." Rogue? What is rogue?" Arak Jalal said. "Everyone is rogue now. It's fashionable to be a rogue." "You'll see it in my report," Aunor replied. "Some have adopted the name Dredgen. You want my professional opinion? Ideas are powerful things, and the Drifter has too many. Board that travesty he calls a ship and throw him out of an airlock before the city sees another Dark Age." The Vanguard and Consensus looked at her in silence. "I have paperwork to file," she said again, turning around. "You know where my office is." As she left, she seen that the same maintenance worker had fallen asleep in the entranceway, hat over his eyes, leaning against a trash can. She narrowed her eyes. So that was the first narrative preview, and of course links to that can be found down below. But here, if you are a little confused, the Drifter basically disguised himself to get up close to this meeting where they're talking about getting rid of him and that he's making Guardians go rogue and becoming sort of corrupted with this darkness. The next narrative preview is very mysterious and kind of weird as the Drifter follows this Aunor character back to the lab where she's studying the death of Cayde 6. This time he chooses a little bit of a different disguise. Here's what it says. Dawdling outside the entrance to a Gensum lab, the man tucked a green coin into a pocket of his newly acquired duster and then checked to make sure his obsidian mine was sealed shut. He fiddled with the clasps of his helmet as a technician carrying a clipboard hurried up to the door. She stepped inside and he followed on her heels. The doors almost caught him as they slid shut and the tech noticed, turning around to take stock of him. "How you livin'?" the man said in a deep modulated voice as he shouldered past her. "Creep," the tech mothered and she walked the other way. The man stopped to check a listing of room schedules on a monitor at the front desk, then continued down the hall into the darkness of Lab 3. Inside, the Praxic warlock Aunor stood under a constellation of holographic projections anchored in the air around her. She saw the man out of the corner of her eye and nodded her head slightly. "Warlock," the man said in greeting. "Warlock," she returned, dragging a looping feed from a far corner into focus in front of her. "I won't be long." "Take your time," he said, leaning up against the far wall. "I've always wanted to see a Praxic at work." "I assure you it's glamorous," she replied, throwing up her arms wide and unfolding the feed into a three-dimensional space. The lab flashed with light and became the shattered, burning husk of the prison of elders. The man turned to his left and saw a familiar, weathered face staring up at the 8 barons of the tangled shore. Cayde 6 stumbled forward and raised a hand. "Hey, help me out there, little buddy." His ghost then appeared in a blazing burst of light. "Freeze playback," Aunor said. Time stopped. "Confirm what I'm seeing." The tower's central processing unit spoke with an automated voice. "Ghost Sundance, audio-visual feed, third-person perspective, date of recording is roughly 6 months prior. Scan the feed for soft light interposition. None found. This ghost feed is direct from the subject's databanks and has not been tampered with." "Resume playback," Aunor said. The high-pitched whine of the rifleman's weapon was the last sound of the feed. It was the last thing Cayde's ghost had ever heard. The bullets shattered the holographic world around Aunor and the man, and Lab 3 reappeared in its place. Aunor swept her coat back and clasped her armored hands behind her. Why did the feed end? Subject Sundance suffered unrecoverable system failure and ceased recording. "Scorned guns can't kill a ghost," the man said, taking a step from the wall and uncrossing his arms. Aunor ignored him. "Cause of death?" she continued. "Sundance appears to be the victim of a single catastrophic wound from a Devourer bullet, modified to fire from a Scorned launcher, projectile classified as ontological. Define Devourer bullet. Payload matches the ballistics of a weapon of sorrow or a comparable hive implement." "What do you think, Warlock?" Aunor asked the man without turning around. "Didn't the Mindbender build himself an ascendant throne?" "Yes. Crafting bullets sounds easy if you can manage that." "Sword logic doesn't work that way. The throne came after," Aunor replied. "It was built on Cayde 6's death." I didn't catch your name." "Finch," said the man. "Finch," Aunor echoed dryly. He gestured at the holographic displays. "What's all this for?" The various HUDs and data streams reflected off Anor's polished black helmet. "I'm investigating the possible involvement of the hero of war in the death of Cayde 6. Finch chuckled. "Won't they hang you for that?" Aunor looked at the ground. "You'd be surprised what the city will let a light bearer get away with." "I hear that. So, is this big hero actually the villain?" "You can read the report once the Vanguard publishes it." Finch nodded. "Fair enough." He turned to leave, then stopped himself. "And what actually happens if the saint turns out to be a sinner?" Aunor still hadn't turned around. "The Praxic Order doesn't hesitate, doesn't stop. If we can prove you've done demonstrable harm to humanity or the city, doesn't matter how far or how fast you can run, we'll catch you and you'll face Praxic fire." "You're a scary sister." She turned to look at him. "You have no idea." Finch coughed and headed for the door. Behind him, Aunor called out, "Didn't you need lab time?" "Just remembered I'm busy," he replied over his shoulder and disappeared. The doors then closed and Aunor stood in the half-darkness, a sea of data screens reflecting off her helmet. "Restart the feed," she said. So Guardians, if you're still with me to this point, that lore is pretty awesome, and it kind of reminds me of the whole Hunt the Truth situation with Halo 5. Of course, that campaign could have turned out way better, but it's the same type of thing. They're hunting down Master Chief, trying to figure out where he is, and this is the same thing with Egypter. They're investigating him, trying to figure out his involvement with these rogue Guardians, and also our possible involvement with Cayde 6's death. So let's summarize this real quick. First, Egypter disguised himself in the maintenance man's gear and listens to the consensus meeting or is outside of it. Here we learn that the Praxic Order wants Egypter out because Gambit is dangerous and the Guardians are going rogue. He is essentially weaponizing the Taken. After the meeting is done, Aunor leaves. She sees the Drifter disguised there sitting on the bench, and she goes to some of the labs to investigate. From here, the Drifter follows her once more and disguises himself as a warlock wearing an obsidian mind helmet and a voice modulator. Now when he enters the room, he sees Aunor is looking at a projection of Cayde 6's death, or in particular the scene where his ghost gets destroyed by the rifleman.
You help me out here, little buddy.
Now the automated voice of the tower describes sort of what's going on here. That the rifleman's bullet is a devourer bullet which comes from weapons of sorrow or a hive implement, but more likely a weapon of sorrow as we see this stuff with Thorn. They also say it wasn't possible for the Barons to acquire this because the Mindbender didn't have a throne world at this point, so someone gave the rifleman this bullet. Now we know this is super weird because weapons of sorrow are guardian weapons corrupted by the hive, or in this case it seems like a bullet. So someone gave them this bullet and it wouldn't really make sense for it to be Aldrin, so who could it be? To find it randomly seems like a little bit of a stretch and weird to me, so I don't think Bungie would just throw that in there. So the big thing to note here is that the Praxic Order is studying the Drifter and his corruption with the darkness, and also the Guardian's possible involvement with Cayde 6's death and how those Barons got that bullet. So from that point, the Drifter leaves the room and she continues to analyze the projection. So it would seem here that the Order is trying to uncover the Drifter and his plans, and given that she is investigating the Guardian's involvement and we've been working alongside the Drifter as well, she essentially is trying to prove that we did something wrong. So now of course I made this video and then Bungie decided to release another lore entry today. So I'm not going to read this whole thing because at this point this video is very long, but basically Ikora enters the lab after all of this and talks to Aunor about this situation. It says, Ikora Ray stepped into Lab 3, followed by Ophiuchus. If that idiot thinks we don't recognize him, it would be easy to empty a shotgun in his back and wait for his ghost to show up, Aunor interrupted. It must be close by. She stared hard at an image of Cayde's final moments. Ikora then explains how the Guardian, or us, are the best Guardians she knows. All we've done up to this point is help the city, everything we've fought for has been for the light, and so on. We've done nothing wrong with Cayde's death. Ikora is then like, okay, what evidence do you have? And she says Sundance was murdered by the Barons of the Tangled Shore. They pooled all their resources together to craft a single thorn-like bullet. Had they missed, the last few months would have played out very differently. The Hunters might still have their vanguard. So she explains the Barons gathered everything they could to craft that single bullet, but how realistic is that? Aunor herself has no more evidence than we do, so at this point she's speculating as well. How did these Barons manage to gather all this scrap together and somehow make a bullet compared to the weapons of sorrow? Ikora then tells her to stay away from the Drifter, and then the lore card there ends. So a little bit of closure, but it still brings up more questions than answers, in my opinion. Now I'm sure we'll get more lore on this tomorrow and throughout the release of this season, but let's dive super deep and put on those tinfoil hats. It's time for some crazy speculation.
Don't do that.
Now of course, not saying any of this is true, but myself and my friends really enjoy discussing these theories and wanted to share some of them with you. So I'm sure other Guardians have brought up these theories as well, but the people that brought it to my attention were my friends Spiridified or Ben and Armad12, who is Ryan. Let's jump right into it. Now Aunor thinks this could be our own Guardians doing, but as we can see from the card, the Drifter acts very suspicious. He asks, so is the hero actually the villain? She then says, wait for the Vanguard's report on it, blah blah blah, and then here the Drifter, who has named himself Finch, begins to turn and leave. Before he does, he turns back and he's like, wait, what happens if this saint is actually the sinner and the hero is actually the villain here? Aunor basically says if the Praxic Order has evidence that the Guardian did do this, they would destroy them on sight. Drifter then turns, she's like, wait, I thought you wanted this lab for some lab time. And he's like, nah, I'm good, just remembered I'm busy, and then he steps out of the room. So with this, the Drifter wants to know what would happen to this person that committed this crime. Once he gets a little creeped out, he suddenly decides to leave as if he was somehow in the wrong or knew someone that was. So moving forward, those are the two sort of topics we're going to revolve around. One, the Drifter did this, or two, he knows someone that gave them that Devourer bullet. Now let's start with the Drifter. Why would the Drifter be qualified to have been this sort of weapons dealer with the Barons? How could he give them the bullet? Well, first, we know his backstory with the Shadows of Yore and him possibly being a Dredgen or part of the Shadows. If he was like described by the Emissary of the Nine, he would have access to these sorrow or weapon tech, and at this point I think he's one of the most qualified people we know to be in that position. Second, he helped kill Callum's soul. Throughout certain quests like The Last Word, the Drifter tells us that that man with the golden gun smeared his friend's ashes on a rock, but when behind the scenes, he actually contacted Shin and told him where Callum was in the first place. And lastly, we have the Last Word quest, where the Drifter becomes more interested in the weapons of sorrow and these Hive rituals. The Hive are trying to make those weapons, and it seems like the Drifter wants a little bit of a piece of it, although he's acting very cautiously. We even see at the end there, once we turn up with the Last Word, he's very frustrated. He's like, wait, why do you have that thing? It should be something completely different.
What the hell are you doing with that gun? That's the last word. You know you can trust me, but the man who gave you that? He's the one who walked into hell and spread my friend's ashes on the side of a rock. Oh, you are such a punk.
So if this is true and the Drifter did plant this bullet, why would he want Cayde 6 dead? In the Ace of Spades quest, we learn that Cayde knew the Drifter long ago. He says this.
This one's for the fellow who calls himself the Drifter. You did warn me running with you would put a target on my back. Guess I'm in good company, though, huh? After all, never had any fun without a little risk. That's the whole idea with the operation you're putting together, ain't it? My idea, by the way, had it like 1,000,000 years ago, back when you were still handsome. So, you're welcome. You know, getting that up and running means coming out of hiding. Giving you-know-who another shot at you. Hope I was around to see that showdown. Personally, my money was on the guy with the golden gun. But hey, what do I know? I'm dead.
So Cayde knew what the Drifter was up to. It was no surprise to him that he was possibly running with the Shadows or was a part of them. Cayde knew about the Drifter's past and also his situation with Shin Malphur as well. Now when you think about it, Cayde was really the only person who knew the Drifter and his past before Forsaken, before he arrived at the tower. If someone did have a problem or could expose him with the Shadows of Your corruption like the Praxic Order, Cayde 6 would be that evidence. Cayde would be like, oh yeah, I knew that he was running with the Shadows all that time ago, but Cayde 6 is dead, his seat is empty at this meeting, and the Drifter is safe for now. So the Drifter shows up around Forsaken near Cayde 6's death and begins his game of Gambit. With Cayde gone, things would seem alright to proceed as not many people here, if any, knew who the Drifter was. Of course besides Shin, but he's not really at the tower. So it would seem like the Drifter's running his game. He thinks he's getting away with some of this, corrupted stuff and the game of Gambit. But this all changes when he realizes the Praxic Order is here and they're having a meeting. So he stalks Aunor, goes behind the scenes to figure out what she knows. And it's kind of odd, right? Of course, he could just be eavesdropping to protect Gambit and his future plans, but could it be really something more like his involvement with the death of Cayde 6?
He didn't feel a thing.
Now next we wanted to throw this out there as well, but it was kind of like, I don't know if that would work, but I might as well just put it in here anyway. So in the Warden of Nothing strike, the goal was to clean out the prison of elders of any stragglers, but the Drifter told us that we needed to kill the Varric Servitor, as the thing's been rampant since he left and is kind of going a little bit crazy. So some of the things I find kind of weird is, one, why did the Drifter run this strike? It could have just been Bungie's writing purposes, like, hey, we'll throw the Drifter here, give him something else to do besides Gambit, and yeah. It could have easily been someone like Zavala to send us in. He's the leader of the Vanguard in the city, he would tell us what to do, right? Why is it the Drifter? And two, he might have had us take out the Servitor to cover up its past memories. If the Drifter was somehow connected to Cayde 6's death and was involved in this prison break to some extent, he may have wanted this thing destroyed to hide any possible evidence spilling out in the future.
What's your scam here, Drifter? You always have one.
No scam.
My Guardian just annihilated a small army to kill one servitor. You have an army?
Careful who you threaten. I just wanted to help one of my favorite guardians out. Guy can't do that? I thought this was a new golden age. Be kind to each other. Am I right?
I'm sorry.
You're the sorriest thing I ever saw.
Let's first begin with Season of Dawn and the Corridors of Time, that whole story with Saint 14. The Corridors of Time were available throughout the seasonal story thanks to Osiris and his sundial, also more freely to explore in the exotic quests in the last couple of weeks of that season. During that time, the corridors featured a giant community quest to unlock the final secret room, find the right path and get to this final room where the Bastion exotic was granted and that whole quest began. Now that wasn't the only thing. In this final room we also found the grave of a guardian, not just any guardian, your guardian. The Corridors of Time were used by the Vex to teleport to different time periods forward or backward. These weren't simulations like other locations, this was actual time travel and survival tactics. During that same season, we would walk the Corridors of Time ourselves thanks to Osiris's sundial. Our first mission was to find Saint 14, who went on a mission during the Dark Age trying to save survivors who fled the Cosmodrome and set up shop on Mercury. Turns out the Fallen chased them here, and our guardian who traversed through time would intervene and assist. As it went, Saint was defeated at this moment, but overall with the vision of the tower from our guardian, the future we showed him, he fought for something new, something greater.
I probably shouldn't be showing you this, but when has that ever stopped us? This is the last safe city of humanity, hundreds of years from now. During the day, there are children laughing in the streets. When night falls, the people sleep in their homes, not against the walls, weapons in hand, like the early days.
Like my people.
These are your people, Saint. They're descendants. If you quit the fight, maybe you'll live forever. Your ghost will protect you no matter what. But this last city might never happen.
Saint went on to fight through the Battle of Six Fronts and his crusade against the Fallen. Sometime later, he learned of Osiris's disappearance into the Infinite Forest on Mercury. On a mission, he went after him, and in the forest he fought Vex for centuries, eventually encountered a mind built to drain his light, and that mind was successful. Saint 14 died. Using the sundial, we go through time, kill the mind that drained Saint's light, and bring him to the present day. So the corridors are very powerful, but in the quest for Bastion, we traversed time and found our own grave with our favorite weapon according to Saint, which was Bastion. I don't know about you, Bastion can be quite annoying and it's probably not my favorite weapon, but let's just continue. Also on the tomb, a sword and a ghost can be found. This weapon is real, but I'm not sure about the ghost. Is this our actual ghost or just a statue of sorts to memorialize it? In this timeline though, we lost during a final confrontation defending the last city. Saint says if anyone finds what we've left here, leave it be, making it sound like the grave is somewhere secluded and hidden away. Perhaps where we were rezzed in the Cosmodrome, if it was even the same place in this timeline. Regardless, this didn't happen. We altered events by saving Saint, and like he had those times where he failed, this was one of ours, thankfully averted. This was one of Destiny's hardest community quests. I mean, just look at this map. Thankfully, Destiny Lore Vault has this dialogue recorded, so thanks to them and give this a listen.
Thank you for coming. We've gathered here today to celebrate the life of my mentor, my inspiration. They called him Crotazen. The Hive Kingslayer. The young wolf. Hero of the Red War. The man who avenged Cayde. He had 100 titles I do not recall. And he died doing what he does best, defending the lost city of humanity. Ages ago, he saved my life, and then inspired me to save myself. I am glad that he did, because travel will help us. He is gone. There is no one to save us now. On the day we met, I decided I would follow his example. I'm still trying. I've marked this grave with one of his favorite weapons, shattered in that final confrontation. It used to be mine. All who find what we've left here, please leave it be. Unless you're still out there somewhere. You've performed miracles before. In which case, take it and come back to us, and we'll kill what killed you, or die trying.
All of this makes me wonder though, what caused our Guardian's death there, and when was it? It seems like we were pretty important during that specific reality, as Saint is frightened there is no one else to save them because we were gone. Died defending the city could mean many things. Maybe it was just like a metaphor. We could have died anywhere in the solar system, but wherever we were always fighting for the last city itself. Or maybe it's quite literal. We died defending the city in the city, like during the Red War, or a confrontation with the darkness in Lightfall's opening cinematic. They speak of final confrontation and darkness, so with the events we know, it kind of seems like Lightfall or the final shape. Quria also spoke of our Guardian's death and us being taken, which was interesting back in Season of the Splicer. And the Dark Future had a much different story with its timeline. In that tale from Elsie, Guardians joined the Pyramid Fleet and the Darkness. The Traveler left and Eris was super evil. So you can see the possibilities of these different outcomes. These are stories that happened in a future, just not our current one, as far as we know. The point of this video, would our Guardian die? What if it's needed to defeat the Witness and save the city? To complete our own final shape ourselves and start a new universe, or save our own? Possibly branching into, quote, Destiny 3 or the next saga of content. What if you started the next saga as a new Guardian, or had the option to? Now there's no real further evidence beyond what we talked about today, which are these different outcomes from timelines, but we can theorize for fun. The build-up with Ghost is at an all-time high. Ghost has been depressed and frightened at our Guardian at times because we use darkness, and what's been happening to it behind the scenes thanks to the Witness.
Why did the darkness invite us here? You're quiet today.
Yeah. It's just, we keep coming face to face with darkness. And every time we fail to stop it, we're just so powerless.
Your Ghost makes a list of things he wishes he could say to you. Talk to me about how you feel. I wish we could go home. You're on a rampage, and I'm not comfortable with it. I don't think this is why the Traveler chose you. You know I'll never leave you, right? But sometimes, I don't like the look in your eyes. Every day the list grows longer. I'm here. I'm still here. Are you still here? I don't want to lose you to this. I love you. Witch Queen's lore spoke of how Ghost was tired and depressed as well, of being used by darkness at times thanks to the Witness. Fast forward to Lightfall, we almost lose Ghost.
What just happened?
Don't think we got any specific lore updating as yet about Ghost's condition, but I feel like that has to be pretty traumatizing. He was already terrified of what was happening in the first place, and now he was the one that caused this link between the Traveler and the Veil. So will this trend continue, and could Ghost be destroyed in the final shape? What if this happened in a final cutscene and all the Guardian can do is fight one last time with no revive? Maybe Ghost sacrifices himself, or we sacrifice ours after Ghost dies. Devotion inspires bravery, bravery inspires sacrifice, and sacrifice leads to death. The ultimate saying for the Guardian spoke by the speaker himself. Many have spoke those words and even followed that path like Savathun. We are already a Guardian, but maybe it's our destiny to do so, to save others in the process. Another crazy theory comes from Bungie's Marathon Infinity, the last game in the Marathon trilogy back in the 90s. If you aren't aware, Marathon has tons of connections to Destiny's story and lore, and the end screen of the last game, Infinity, is quite intriguing. Listen to this. We've watched while the stars burned out, and creation played in reverse, the universe freezing in half-light. Once I thought to escape, to end the Endmaster, step out of the path of collapse. Escape would make us God, yet I cannot help remember one enigma. A hybrid, elusive destroyer. This is the only mystery I have not solved, the only element unaccounted for. Even Savathun is no more. He saved his entire race, but in the end, frozen by despair. He joined the chaos he sought to evade, but you were dead 1,000 times. Hopeless encounters successfully won. A man long dead, grafted to machines your builders did not understand. You follow the path, fitting into an infinite pattern, yours to manipulate, to destroy and rebuild. Now, in the quantum moment before the closure, when all becomes one moment left, one point of space and time, I know who you are. You are destiny. So that was from Marathon Infinity. Could just be Marathon lore and story, but some of that does sound like Destiny, doesn't it? Clearly the last word, but mentions of someone dead 1,000 times, kind of like a Guardian. Following a path fitting in an infinite pattern, kind of like the final shape. In the moment before closure, when all becomes one point of space and time, maybe like the portal realm, I know who you are destiny. Did Bungie look back at Marathon to inspire parts of Destiny, and does this last saying have any meaning in its actual story? Hints at Guardians, the final shape ending, and what the destiny of our character truly is? I guess we'll have to wait and see. Anyway, Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. Let me know your thoughts on all of this. Do you think our Guardian would die at the end of the final shape? Maybe in a way to sacrifice themselves to save the universe or start a new universe. Maybe they do die but somehow survive through a character like Ghost or some reborn method. Maybe the Traveler brings you back, I don't know. Regardless, the corridors of time were super fun, different timelines, messing around with things, and it'd be cool to explore some more of that in the future as well. Who is the strongest Guardian to ever exist, both in terms of pure power and also the knowledge gained over the years? There's over 1 million Guardians, but from the prominent characters we know about from the lore, who comes out on top? Today we're going to dive through the incredible feats of Destiny's Guardians and discuss who may earn the gold medal of power once all is said and done. Before we jump in, let's throw up some disclaimers, I guess. We are only going to be discussing the known Guardians in the lore at this moment. I guess there could be some random Guardian camping out in a desert with more power than the sun, but hey, until we know or someone goes out and finds them, this is what we have. Also, this is for fun and up for interpretation. Some of these characters have incredible feats of strength in their own battles, but we wouldn't truly know who comes out on top unless they fought each other and put them to the test. It's super hard to rank them specifically even with the lore, but let's begin with the Warlocks. Ikora Rey still holds the record for most consecutive victories in the Crucible. No one else has come close. That was from Lord Shaxx. In the Crucible, you can earn the "We Ran Out of Medals" medal. In a single life, defeat 20 opposing Guardians. This was created because Ikora Rey was the first to complete that. Ikora fought Shaxx and defeated him, nearly killing him and destroying parts of their battlefield. The Witch Queen Collector's Edition states how powerful Ikora is. IKO-006 ranks in the upper fraction of the 99th percentile of assessed warlocks and most available metrics of precision, restraint, and raw power. She is, in simplistic terms, a 5th Sigma Guardian, 1 in 3.5 million. Given that millions of Guardians have been activated over the centuries since the collapse, and assuming that performance of Guardians on these metrics is normally distributed, we would expect about 10 Guardians of similar power to have existed. Probability favors Ikora's existence, but also her rarity. She is neither an average Guardian nor evidence for some special intervention by the Traveler. The fundamental challenge to defeating IKO-006 is that it's very difficult to create a context she cannot master. Her talents are honed towards acquiring and processing information. It would be difficult for even a Golden Age human to understand the time span she has lived, or to grasp the depth and range of the intuitive mechanisms, both cognitive and paracausal, which Ikora has cultivated and internalized. She has achieved a limited clairvoyance, an arsenal of honed preconscious heuristics which deliver her, with no more effort than water flowing downhill, to her easiest path to victory. Her goal acts as an attractor in the chaotic landscape of possible futures. She is capable of correctly resolving quandaries like a halting problem, which a turning machine could not compute given the entire age of the universe. In the great tradition of context manipulators versus brute force, Ikora is another victory for the power of context manipulation.
Hold your fire, Guardian. I've got this. Go on. I'll draw fire here. All that matters right now is the Traveler. Whatever you hear, whatever you see, don't let it distract you from stopping the ritual.
Next up, Osiris is very powerful. He taught Ikora most of what she knows, the Master and the Jedi. Osiris has some different capabilities. He can clone himself into reflections of light, which he used at the Battle of Six Fronts and was seen in Curse of Osiris. When at full strength and in his prime, Osiris could fight in multiple locations at once, and beams of pure radiance. Osiris has tons of knowledge from his years as the Warlock Vanguard, Scavenger of the Infinite Forest, and Takeover by Savathun. Although he's lost his strength, at one point Osiris was the strongest Guardian to ever exist. Our character even recognizes this.
She's not dead. Her name is Sagira. I've known her a very long time. And her Guardian, Osiris.
The Osiris? The most powerful Guardian ever. The hero of Six Fronts. The Zavala before Zavala?
Zavala wouldn't like to hear you call him that. Most Guardians won't even speak Osiris's name. He was the only Vanguard commander ever exiled from the city. And the man who taught me what it means to be a warlock.
In the Immolent Part 2, he is seen chaining multiple supers together at the same time. Solar wings combust from Osiris's back. In each hand, he wields a blade of dawn. The calamity of his inferno sends hives scattering in every direction. Vashir and her two daughters, Yishra and Ariax, turn to confront the Phoenix. They are ashen before their first incantations complete. He paints the scene apocalyptic. 15 noble brood are reduced to cinders before a defense is mounted. Osiris sails through the air as daggers of dark power whistle past him. Golden echoes split from his body to cut down fleeing hive and soak reprisals. Kinox, the last daughter of Crota, scurries through the cracks between the rocks as her son, Alg-Urin, and his cohort of lesser knights raise their shields to defend her. Osiris extinguishes a blade into his palm to form a singularity of void and hurls a nova bomb that consumes them. With his other blade, he dives. He dives into the ground, erupting a well of radiance surrounded by a phalanx of gilded echoes. So yeah, you wouldn't want to mess with Osiris, especially when he had all those full powers. He used those reflections at the Battle of Six Fronts, and Shaxx says he's the only reason they won that battle. He was one of the first Vanguard leaders and realized there was bigger threats on the horizon. Some didn't see it that way, so they would exile him, but he would then explore the Infinite Forest and find new threats. Threats would end in expansions like Curse of Osiris.
Oh, go! To your left! 2 o'clock, medium range! You're welcome!
Lord Shaxx is one of the strongest titans. Saladin is right up there too, but Shaxx, like Ikora, was a force in the Crucible. His journey all started in those early warlord days, when Lord Felwinter, among others, would try to take over his settlement. What did Shaxx do? He gave him a backhand that took his head clean off. Shaxx has only ever lost one duel in the Crucible, and that was to Ikora Rey. He carried Guardians through the Twilight Gap battle alongside those allies. And although he sits on the sideline for now, when time comes for battle, Shaxx won't be afraid to jump up and step into the action.
You want the Crucible? I am the Crucible.
There are many titans with insane abilities seen in the lore, like Saladin, who was launched as a Javelin Thunder Crash by Aphrodite at a fallen walker. When it comes down to it, if we had to pick one, the game literally states Saint 14 is the greatest titan who's ever lived.
My name is Saint 14. They call me the greatest titan who ever lived.
Saint 14 fought the Vex for over a century in the Infinite Forest. Hordes of them, wave after wave, and he would come out on top. Until he didn't, and we would go in and help him out a bit, but that's dedication. Saint killed enough Vex to end a war, it was said. After an extensive period of fighting, the Vex built a mine to drain his light, and he still killed it. When Saint died, the Vex even built a memorial for him out of respect for his fighting. We saw this back in Curse of Osiris.
What happened? Vex. Thousands of them. Saint 14's light. It's gone.
Rest in peace, my friend.
Osiris, I'm so sorry.
I think we should leave him here. It looks like the Infinite Forest laid him to rest. Built him a memorial. Did the Vex learn to respect him? I don't think I ever told you this, but Saint 14 was one of the first Guardians I ever met. Even before I found you. I always hoped you'd turn out like him. I wasn't disappointed. You were a good friend, Saint. Goodbye.
During the Battle of Six Fronts, other Guardians died and were rezzed all the time, but not Saint. He survived the entire thing and fought like a madman the entire way. Saint 14 was able to hold a Titan bubble up for an extended period of time, as seen in the Curse of Osiris mission. And during Splicer, we got a look into his crusade against the Fallen, slaughtering many Elixni in defense of the city, even headbutting a Kel which dented his helmet. So you have characters like Ikora who can hurl multiple Nova Bombs after each other, but then you have pure power and strength of Saint 14. Going up against his enemy, he just gotta punch him in the face and use his own head, do what Titans love to do. There's of course other Titans like Wei Ning who moved an entire mountain with a punch, it was said, but they also died to Crota. In terms of power though, that's still pretty cool. Moving on to the Hunters, Aunor Bray has been around a while. She's worked alongside Braycorp in her early days and then became a Guardian, fighting in some of those early city battles. She displayed incredible amounts of strength during those battles. We all touched the light in ways we never thought we could, or should. Anna, though, when she fired the gun where her golden gun blast hit home, she left behind pools of light, like splashes of sunlight that burned and burned. I believe that was from Lord Shaxx, and those pools of light are said to still be around to this day. Solar might engulfs 18 kelvins. Anna hammers off 2 rounds of celestial annihilation. They melt straight through the exo, puncture the station plating, and scream through space for light years. Maybe all Guardian golden guns work this way lore-wise, but Anna seems to have some raw power for sure. Golden gun shots that last forever and pools that still exist from battles probably hundreds of years ago. Shin Malphur took down the Shadows of Yore as a bounty hunter and is known as the Hunter. Shin is known as the man with the golden gun because, well, he created it, and although we never see him, he has some encounters that should be turned into a movie. Anna Bray may be more powerful with her golden gun shots at time, but Shin knows his way around his light-based creation. All hunters use the golden gun model he created. He is the master of its capabilities. Shin hunted down those Shadows of Yore, killing countless evil guardians with ease. That's an advantage he has over some of the others. Icor played in Crucible, defeated some opponents, but Shin Malphur took him out for good. Shin also has that value of experience, being around for a while and honing his skills. Don't hunt him cause you've been wronged. Hunt him cause what they did was wrong. There's a world of a difference there, kid. One makes you selfish, the other makes you a hero, and I see a hero in you.
If I'm reading this right, your friend Callum was killed by another Guardian.
Nothing kills you quicker.
I'm pulling final audio from his ghost. Hang on.
I gave you a chance. Gave all of you a chance. I told you not to follow him.
You and I are the same. Sometimes we do the wrong thing for the right reasons.
Spoken like a true disciple. If you have any last words, now is the time.
You'll never kill us all.
I don't have to. You're killing yourselves.
I think you have some explaining to do.
Now we come to our Guardian. We've accomplished so much in a short period of time. 9 years in game compared to hundreds or maybe thousands of characters like Lord Shaxx, Saladin, and so on. Although we have incredible amounts of power of both light and dark, we don't have much knowledge compared to others who've been alive for hundreds of years, like Ikora, Shin, Osiris. The Young Wolf, the Slayer of Oryx, the Guardian. They've completed some incredible tasks over the years, from destroying the Black Heart to hunting down the Hive siblings, ending the Savathun and helping the Awoken of the Reef. Every big moment that happened in the last 9 years, the Guardian has been a part of.
I refuse to bury any more friends.
You won't have to. Aldrin Sov is mine.
Our Guardian may very well be one of the strongest to have ever lived, in that top percentile like Ikora Rey. Remember how it all started. At first we thought Sepix, a floating mechanical ball, was an issue. Now we take on tormentors, disciples, and gods themselves. Other Guardians are important, but like the agent mentions, we're special. It seems like the game's title, it was our destiny to be the one to save this universe, hopefully. During the Red War, every Guardian lost their light, and we were the only one who was granted a vision by the Traveler to go to the shard in the European Dead Zone and get our light back. The Traveler allowed this to happen, thus we went out, got the band back together, and stopped Gaul, returning the light to every other Guardian, including our city leaders. You may be like, okay, they could have just went to the shard themselves and got their light back, but not really. In lore, Ikora actually went to the shard, but nothing happened. It seems our Guardian was chosen specifically. I believe later on, Bungie stated that some Guardians did visit the shard and potentially get their light back, but I'm not sure if that was referencing our character from the Red War or other Guardians in general. Regardless, only the Travelers chosen seem to be rewarded, doesn't matter how strong you are.
I haven't been as close to the Traveler's light since... Do you feel it? Hold on to your helmet. Do you feel it? The light is back. We're back. Eyes out, Guardian.
There is no such thing as a low-power Guardian. There may be armor you can't actuate or weapons mechanisms you can't understand. There may be techniques you have yet to master and missions you dare not attempt. But the possibility of your light is unlimited. I mean this very seriously. A novice Go player has the exact same power to place stones as a 9-Dan master. The only difference between them lies in their knowledge and ability to choose. This is my firmly held and personal truth. The only difference in power between you and me lies in what we have learned and practiced. Ikora Rey. While we've taken down hive gods, most of us haven't done it alone. Unless you're god tier out there soloing Nezarec or Oryx, most of us have done this in a 5-man fire team to get the job done. When Petra talked about the Last Wish, she says 5 Guardians went in to complete this, and of course the Guardian was one among them, so sometimes it would seem that full fire team aspect of it is canon. Most of what we have accomplished has also been done with the help of other Guardians, including leaders like Ikora, Osiris, Saint, and even our allies like Mithrax have given us intel over the years to go in and complete those missions. We were just the brute force and that power used to get the job done. There's also the argument that of course Osiris can pop multiple supers back to back. He's not constrained to game mechanics like we are and our character. If Bungie wrote a lore entry about the young wolf, maybe they could do the same. Maybe any Guardian could if they train enough, like Ikora says. Being the greatest or most powerful Guardian is not all about your abilities. It's about being a mentor as well. Something other Guardians look up to and appreciate the knowledge you've gained over the years. There are many strong titans, but Saint never gave up after endless years of fighting Vex to make his way back and make something meaningful happen. Osiris fought through multiple battles and even after losing his light can still be seen as a beacon of hope. So let's get to the verdict. This is based on opinion, so leave yours in the comments below. From the characters we've listed or others if you believe they belong here. In terms of the greatest or strongest Guardian with power, experience, and strength in the equation when they would fight each other, here's what we got. Logically, you might say the Guardian is number 1. We have an insane list of accomplishments in a short amount of time compared to the others. We lack some knowledge, but if it continues on this path, we would no doubt be the greatest Guardian. With more years to train, learn, and annihilate gods, we would easily be on top. We also have something the others may not, given the Traveler has chosen us for tasks multiple times. In this season's lore card, when Savathun gets revived, Ikora threatens her. She's like, Savathun, tell us how to enter the portal or I'll kill you. Savathun isn't afraid in the slightest of Ikora, but when our Guardian steps up and says, I'll end you again, she shuts up real quick. Bungie seems to not rank characters on purpose, which makes sense, but the Guardians got to be on top. Next we have the Phoenix, Osiris. In his prime, he would have been a force to reckon with those projections and pure radiance of light. That would have been a sight to see. Ikora Rey was a menace in the Crucible, and being a warlock is all about the books, what she can learn to further improve herself and her allies. Ghost called Osiris the greatest guardian to ever live. The greatest titan to ever live is up next in Saint 14. Saint's leadership and raw strength cements him at number 3. It was a close one between he and Ikora, but Ikora has more guardian to guardian experience. If this was surviving a battle against any other enemy like the Vex or Fallen, Saint would easily win, but for strongest as greatest guardian amongst others, let's put Saint here on the list. Lord Shaxx is up next because, well, he's Shaxx.
Aren't you the guardian who beat Shaxx 3-2 in the Crucible last year? Yeah, thought so.
And finally we come to the man with the golden gun in Shin Malphur. Shin is what it means to be a hunter. Out in the wild, in the shadows with nothing but a golden gun and a plan, eliminating evil guardians and avenging those from his early days. You don't want to mess with the man with the golden gun, but I'm sure characters like Osiris would put him to shame. This list can go on, but you kinda get the idea. From the guardians we've discussed, this is my current list. Leave your own list in the comments below. Who do you think should be on top, and is there anyone else you think should be included? Characters like Zavala are also pretty powerful, but I feel the ones we've mentioned may have the upper hand. Anyway Guardians, that's all we got for today's video. If you'd like to see some more Destiny lore and mysteries just like it, please be sure to subscribe to the channel. I thank you very much for watching, and I'll catch you all in the next video.